Now we're going to use the fact that we learned in the last video to find some values of x and y in various triangles. Now we can see that we have angles here in this diagram that are congruent to each other. So we know that the sides opposite those two are congruent to each other, but I don't have any information about this side yet. I can get more information from this triangle though. I know that all three of these angles add up to 180. If this is 60 and that's 60, that's 120. And we need another 60-degree angle to be able to fill out the 180 degrees. So that gives us that all three of these angles are the same. This is an equilateral triangle, which means that all three of these sides must also be congruent to each other. So if this is 16 units, then this side must also be 16 units. And we now know that our x value is 16, so we're done with that one. This one has a little bit more because we have 3x, but we can see that all three sides of these are congruent. That means that all three of these angles are congruent. So this one must be also 3x, and this one is also 3x, and we know that all three of these angles add up to 180 degrees. So we're going to create an equation from that. This 3x, and this 3x, all three of those angles add up together to be equal to 180 degrees. That gives us 9x is equal to 180, and we can finish this out by dividing by 9, and we get x equals 20. So we're finished with these two. In our next diagram, we're going to have a few more details in the picture. So you can see right here, we're going to start with this one, that these two triangles are probably not the same as each other, but we have some pieces of information. We're trying to find the value of x and of y in this particular problem. Okay, I know that these two sides are congruent to each other, so I know that these two angles opposite each other are congruent. So this one is also x. If we have x here, this one also must be x. If I knew this last angle right here, I could figure out what adds up to be 180 degrees. Now I know that this angle is 40 degrees. These two form a linear pair, so this angle and this angle must add up to 180 degrees. 40 plus 140 equal 180 degrees. So we get x plus 140, x plus 140. We now know all three of those angles add up to 180 degrees. Or in other words, x plus x equals, if we subtract that 140, 40 degrees. Finish this out, combine like terms, 2x equals 40, and we'll divide by 2 to find that x equals 20. Okay, now if you remembered from our exterior angles theorem, this is actually an exterior angle to these, so those two add up to that measure, which we can see right here. So you might have been able to shortcut this question, but I kind of like thinking about all three angles together. Okay, that leaves us with this y here. Now I'm going to put in the information I know. This x is 20, and this x is also 20. So I'm going to put that in there because now I can use that to figure out the remainder of this angle, and then I can figure out what y is. I know that these two angles together add up to 90 degrees because of that marking right there. So 20 and 70 add up to 90. That means this angle must be 70 degrees. Okay, we've got 70 and 40. What makes 180 with those three? 70 plus 40 is 110. That leaves another measure of 70 for this. So our y must equal 70 degrees. Okay, so we're finished with this. X equals 20 and y equals 70. Let's take a look at our last one. We notice that this one has measures of sides right here instead of measures of angles like the last one. So this side right here is y plus 12. This side from here to here is 3x minus 5. And this side from here to here is 5y minus 4. We know that there are some angles that are congruent, so we're going to start to mark congruent sides based on our relationship that we know. So we have two congruent angles right here. That means the sides opposite those are congruent. So this one is congruent to that one. That's nice because we can relate these two together. We know these three angles are congruent to each other. So we know this one is congruent to that one. So that means that this side is congruent to those other two as well. So we now have all three of these sides that are congruent to each other. So let's start to set up some equations where we can solve for x and y. Now I have just y's in these two equations, so I'm going to start with that one because it'll be the easiest with just the one variable. That gives us 5y minus 4 right here is congruent or equal to y plus 12. Y plus 12. So we've got these two equations and now we can solve for y. Let's add the 4 to get those like terms together. That gives us 5y equals y plus 16. Subtract y. Get 4y equals 16 and divide by 4 to get y equals 4. Awesome. So we now have our y value. We need to get our x value. So let's start to take a look at this side right here. All right. We know that this side is congruent to that one. So that gives us 3x minus 5 equals y plus 12 because they are congruent. But we know our y value. It's 4. So let's take that and let's put it in here for a 4 plus 12. Now we can solve for x and finish out our question. 4 plus 12 is 16. So we get 3x minus 5 equals 16. Add 5. We get 3x equals 21. And divide by 3 to get x equals 7. Let's check our work and make sure all three of those sides are congruent. So if y equals 4, 5 times 4 is 20, minus 4 is 16. Let's make sure these two are also 16. If y is 4, that gives us 4 plus 12, which is also 16. Awesome. If x is 7, then we get 3 times 7, which is 21, minus 5, which is also 16. So indeed, these three sides are congruent to each other. That confirms that our work is correct. Thank you.